With that, we invite our first two guests to take their place at the witness table. They are our colleagues in the House of Representatives. Ron Paul represents a district in Texas after the inexplicable background that has him being born in Pittsburgh, going to Gettysburg College, and then going south. I'll never understand it, but nevertheless, that's part of his record. And since then, he has been active in Texas politics and in all other kinds of endeavors in Texas. He has been an insistent voice in the issue at hand and has properly pestered our committee for time and slot to make his views known, and we welcome him here today. With him is the gentleman from Georgia, a former member of the CIA, a former U.S. attorney, who has become a member of the Judiciary Committee and has cooperated with us in many other similar issues. He, too, traced me wherever I happened to be in my district and was persistent enough to reach me. And at that time, I acquiesced to his appearance here today. We welcome the remarks of our colleagues. We'll start with Congressman Paul.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate very much your holding these hearings. I appreciate very much you holding these hearings because the regulation, of course, that we're addressing today was proposed back in December, and I think this is the first time we've had anything official to really look into this, and I give you a lot of credit for this. And it is true, a lot of people have spoken out about this, and a lot of inquiries have been made, probably more on a subject of a regulation than any other time in our history. Usually they get 200 or 300 inquiries or comments about a regulation, but now it is up to 135,000. But I would like to submit my written statement and
without objection,
and some addendums to that, because I just want to go over a few points and make a few points and try to make it as brief as possible. But to me, it is a very important issue. The financial privacy is important, but I see this as just one part of the total privacy issue, which I have exerted a lot of energy in trying to study. But this one in particular is something that we should be, in a way, pleased about, because the American people and the Congress is waking up to this very important issue. I think too often we in the Congress and the people of this country are careless about sacrificing their liberties with good intent. We give too much authority to the regulators, to the agencies, to the administrative branch of government, because in reality, under a strict constitutional rule, agencies of government wouldn't write these kind of things. It would be only the Congress. So to me, this is a great benefit to one who advocates strict constitutional rule, is this points out the shortcomings of the system under which we live. So I'm delighted to see what has happened. Last summer, we had a money laundering bill come up which urged the passage of this type of regulation. The bill passed the House and the Banking Committee on voice vote, but I did write a long dissenting view on this because I thought this was the wrong direction to go, and that is available in my testimony as well. But I think that we as a Congress should address this and decide who really has this authority to write regulations like this. And to me, there is no question about it. I see the responsibility of us as members of Congress as being the protector of liberty rather than the violators of liberty. And when we see regulations like this, this is an intrusion into the privacy and the liberties of individuals. So if we participate in it, either directly by passing a law that encourages or by neglect and allow the agencies to do this, we are complicit in this. We are part of the problem. So I see the responsibility falling on us, and that is why I'm so delighted that you've brought these hearings about and that we have a chance to talk about it. We cannot expect the banks to be our protector. The banks have a burden, the small banks more so than the large banks, and they have done their share in trying to stop this. But the real abuse is on the private citizen, the individual citizen, and many argue that the abuse may well be on the unsophisticated, the poor, the minority individual who's not quite able to protect themselves. We have been pursuing this concept of stopping money laundering since we passed the Bank Secrecy Act of 1970. And this is precisely where they claim they get the authority to do this. So it smolders, it sits there. We weren't here in 1970, but the authority was given, and yet they continue to use this authority. I have a bill introduced, and I have 40 co-sponsors, which repeals this authority for an agency of government to impose regulations like this. I don't think that bill will get to the floor and that we're going to pass it, but I don't suspect that these regulations will go into effect because we have done a lot to call attention to the problems. But yet again, will they stop? Is the authority? Yes. And we have to talk about the motivation for this authority. And it's twofold. One is the IRS. This is one of the things they do. They want to know where the money is and make sure everybody's paying their taxes. So if we endorse the concept of the IRS, the big government, and efficient tax collecting, yes, they want to know what everybody is doing. But more than the IRS, the motivation behind this has been the war on drugs. And this is much more challenging. I am a physician. I detest the use of drugs. I think they're horrible. And yet I condemn the 25, 30-year war, federal war on drugs. I think it's a total failure and has been used for the total sacrifice of personal liberties. It is used for the seizure and forfeiture of property, which we should address as well. And yet again, who suffers? The poor people, the unsuspected, the people who can't protect themselves. It has been reported, and this is a hard figure to believe, it's been reported that for a conviction under forfeiture laws or under money laundering, it costs the U.S. government $100 million. We have spent $200 billion on the war on drugs, and there's no evidence that we have made any improvement. But again, I think they're incompatible. So I challenge my colleagues to think about this. Can we have big government who love big government programs, and can we have the war on drugs without the sacrifice of liberty? That, to me, I think is the real challenge, and I thank the chair.
We thank the gentleman. The next witness is, as introduced, the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Barr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a tremendous honor to be before this panel today. A very distinguished panel, and I appreciate the work of this panel in beginning to draw attention to these Know Your Customer regulations. I appear here today not only as a member of the Judiciary Committee with the same background that the other members of this panel in the subcommittee bring to addressing these problems, but also as with two other members of your panel here with us today as a former United States Attorney. And I appear here today also, I suppose, as probably one other thing that all of us has in common, and that is as a banking customer. The Know Your Customer regulations, from the standpoint of a banking customer, a former U.S. attorney, and a member of the Judiciary Committee, in my view, are totally unnecessary and would cause very serious harm, both economic and otherwise, not only to our banking system, but would eat away at something that is in very short supply in our society today, and that is confidence in and credibility of the federal government. From the standpoint of a former United States attorney, I can tell you that there are very, very stringent laws and regulations already on the books which are used day in and day out by United States attorneys and assisting United States attorneys in conjunction with investigators from our federal investigative agencies that I believe are clearly sufficient and have been proved to be sufficient to attack serious problems of money laundering through our financial institutions. There is more than sufficient power at the beck and call of United States attorneys and federal investigators now if they believe, if they have reason to believe, reasonable cause to believe, probable cause to believe that a banking customer or somebody utilizing a financial services institution is laundering money. There is no reason to vastly expand, and the Know Your Customers regulations, Mr. Chairman, are not an incremental expansion. They are a vast expansion of the power of federal regulatory agencies. From the standpoint of attacking money laundering, there is no reason whatsoever for these new and vastly expanded regulations. I noticed in a wire service story today that the Vice President has appointed an individual as a new privacy czar. This might be one of the first areas that this privacy czar could look at. Because, as has been mentioned by members of this panel already in their opening statements, what we're really looking at here is yet another manifestation of the war on privacy that seems to be the hallmark of much of what the federal government is engaged in as we reach the close of our century and enter a new millennium. Much more so than ever in the past, the currency of the 21st century will be information. That is where real power lies. That is where economic and political power is rooted. And if we allow these sorts of regulations to move forward, then we will have lost, perhaps even before we enter the 21st century, the first great battle of the 20th century, and that is to see virtually one of the last vestiges of privacy, that is a person's individual economic relationship with their bank, completely eradicated. We have heard in our office, Mr. Chairman, from thousands of constituents and other citizens from different districts around the country. I know the FDIC has indicated they have heard from, I think, close to 150,000 people opposed to this and virtually just a handful in support of it. I think that should tell us something. I am very, very pleased. I was reading as I was waiting for the opportunity to appear here this morning, Mr. Chairman, the comments of the Comptroller of the Currency, Mr. Hawk, and I'm very pleased to see that as his prepared statement says, quote, "It is my judgment, however, that the proposal should be promptly withdrawn. I firmly believe that any marginal advantages for law enforcement in this proposal are strongly outweighed by its potential for inflicting lasting damage on our banking system." One would certainly have wished that those in government had heeded this advice and looked at these regulations more closely before this point, but certainly that is heartening to see, and I hope that Mr. Hawk's colleagues in the executive branch share his view, listen to the people, listen to the Congress, and revoke these horrendous proposed regulations forthwith. As Mr. Paul has done, I have introduced legislation, H.R. 530, that would, if necessary, rectify this legislatively. We may move forward with that because I think these are important issues, Mr. Chairman, as evidenced by these hearings today, to discuss regularly and in depth with the American people. Similar to what we did last year when the proposed regulations on a national ID card surfaced, the citizens were mobilized. Mr. Paul and myself and other members of the Congress listened to those concerns, got together with Mr. Nojheim at the ACLU, other organizations from all across the political spectrum who are bound together by a common desire to retain and protect whatever small vestiges of privacy our institutions and our citizens have. This is another example of why it's so important to remain vigilant and active in highlighting these sorts of intrusions, and I salute you, Mr. Chairman, and the members of this subcommittee for being on the crest of that wave addressing these problems.
We thank the gentleman. Without objection, the written statement of Congressman Barr will be admitted into the record. Parenthetically, I want to say that I consulted with the gentleman from Iowa, Mr. Leach, the chairman of the Banking Committee, of which Mr. Paul is a member, and he felt very good about the fact that we were going to administratively and regulation-wise delve into the issue, and he has promised and will deliver, I know, a letter that we can put into the record showing the Banking Committee's concern as well on this important issue. Is the gentleman from Georgia a member of the Banking Committee as well?
He is, Mr. Chairman.
We've had expert testimony right from the start. We thank both of you, and we'll be inviting you to join us in further action in the regulatory war, as it were. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.